He stood motionless in the freezing rain for hours, lips turning blue, soaked to the bone, while palace officials insisted tradition must be upheld. But when Princess Charlotte saw him, she stepped forward, holding an umbrella, and invoked a forgotten royal protocol that changed everything. So, what was this centuries-old tradition? And how did a 9-year-old princess know it by heart? Before we reveal what happened next, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. The rain fell in relentless sheets across London, transforming the ornate grounds of Buckingham Palace into glistening pools that reflected the darkened sky. Yet amidst this aquatic assault stood Sergeant Ewan Catterick of the Queen's Guard, a scarlet figure unmoved by the elements that had scattered tourists in every direction. His bearskin cap, normally an impressive display of military tradition, now served as a reluctant reservoir, channeling rivulets down his already saturated uniform. Weather services had issued amber warnings across the capital, flash flooding expected, wind gusts reaching 40 miles per hour, and temperatures dropping to unseasonable lows. Palace officials had quietly modified some ceremonial activities, but the guards remained at their posts, sentinels against not just potential threats, but against the compromise of centuries-old tradition. Sergeant Catterick's eyes remained fixed forward, his expression revealing nothing of the cold that had penetrated every layer of his uniform. The ceremonial rifle in his white-gloved hands remained perfectly positioned, the metal now slick and cold against his increasingly numb fingers. "Look at him standing there still as a statue," whispered a woman to her companion as they hurried past. "I can't believe they make them stay out in this weather." "Dedication, that," her companion replied with respectful admiration. "You wouldn't catch me standing still for 5 minutes in this downpour, let alone hours." In his mind, Catterick compared the current conditions to the monsoon season he'd endured during deployment in Southeast Asia. At least then, movement had been possible, shelter eventually available. Today, his duty demanded perfect stillness, perfect composure, regardless of nature's assault. A crack of thunder caused several remaining tourists to flinch, but Catterick remained motionless. The marble beneath his boots had become treacherous with rain, requiring subtle adjustments in muscle tension to maintain his perfect stance. These micro-corrections happened automatically after years of training, invisible to observers, but demanding significant physical control. From beneath the shelter of the palace colonnade, a small cluster of visitors had formed, their phones occasionally rising to capture images of the solitary guard standing firm against the elements. Among them, an elderly man with military bearing observed with particular intensity, occasionally nodding with understanding that suggested personal experience with such duty. Sergeant Ewan Catterick had served 12 distinguished years in Her Majesty's Armed Forces before his current posting to the Queen's Guard. 2 tours in Afghanistan, specialized training with NATO forces, and a peacekeeping deployment with the United Nations had forged both his reputation and his character. The scar beneath his uniform, a reminder of shrapnel wounds sustained in South Sudan, occasionally tightened in cold weather, and today it made its presence known with particular insistence. The Catterick men had stood guard for 3 generations. His grandfather had maintained position during the Great London Fog of 1952 when visibility dropped to inches. His father had stood watch through the bitter winter of 1971 when temperatures plummeted and water froze in canteens. Now Ewan continued this lineage of service, adding his own chapter to the family's proud tradition of unwavering duty. As the rain continued its assault, Catterick employed subtle techniques developed through years of ceremonial duty. The almost imperceptible shifting of weight from heel to toe prevented his feet from becoming completely numb. The careful management of each breath helped regulate his core temperature despite his soaked uniform. His eyes fixed on a specific stone in the palace facade, creating a mental anchor that helped disassociate from physical sensation. 6 months earlier, a routine patrol near Juba had ended with an unexpected explosion and a medical evacuation. The shoulder injury had healed well enough for his return to active duty, but not without leaving its mark. The palace doctor had expressed concern about prolonged exposure to cold and damp conditions, suggesting modified duties during inclement weather. Catterick had politely declined. "Weather's just weather," he had told his sister during a rare phone call last week. "South Sudan taught me what real discomfort means." Now, as lightning briefly illuminated the palace grounds, Catterick recalled his personal motto: "Discomfort passes, dignity remains." It was a phrase his grandfather had shared, attributed to some long-forgotten sergeant major, but it had become Catterick's touchstone through difficult moments. The weight of his sodden uniform had increased markedly since taking his post 2 hours earlier. The scarlet tunic, designed more for ceremonial splendor than practical protection, now clung heavily to his frame. Water had penetrated collar and cuffs, creating a persistent chill that worked its way steadily inward. Dr. Margaret Ashbury had planned today's historical walking tour of London carefully, but the weather had forced significant modifications to her itinerary. As the history professor shepherded her university students beneath the inadequate shelter of a nearby archway, her gaze repeatedly returned to the solitary guard standing in the downpour. "We should move on to Westminster Abbey," suggested her teaching assistant. "They've opened the cloisters early because of the storm." "In a moment, Doctor," Ashbury replied, her academic interest in royal tradition suddenly overshadowed by more immediate concerns. "That guard has been standing there without relief for nearly 2 hours now." Lightning flashed dramatically across the London skyline, followed by a crack of thunder that suggested dangerous proximity. Several of her students jumped at the sound, huddling closer together beneath shared umbrellas as the rain intensified. "This isn't mere rain anymore, Doctor," Ashbury muttered, noting how the guard's scarlet uniform had darkened to burgundy with saturation. "It's becoming dangerous. A practical woman by nature, Doctor." Ashbury had always balanced her appreciation for historical tradition with modern sensibilities. Her academic career studying British royal customs had given her deep respect for the ceremonial aspects of monarchy, but her humanitarian instincts now overrode scholarly detachment. The barely perceptible tremor in the guard's white-gloved hands suggested the beginning stages of hypothermia. Decision made. She turned to her students. "Wait here. I'm going to speak with someone about this situation." Dr. Ashbury approached a palace staff member who stood beneath a black umbrella near the visitor's entrance. "Excuse me," she began, her professional tone masking her growing worry. "I'm Dr. Margaret Ashbury, history professor at King's College. I'm concerned about the guard stationed at the East Post. He's been exposed to these conditions for an extended period." The staff member offered a polite but practiced smile. "The Queen's Guard operates under specific protocols. Madam, they're well trained for all weather conditions. I understand tradition, perhaps better than most, Doctor." Ashbury persisted. "But surely there are provisions for extreme weather. The Met Office has upgraded this to a severe weather warning. I assure you, the welfare of all palace personnel is carefully monitored," came the measured response. "The ceremonial duties of the Queen's Guard are governed by regulations dating back centuries." As they spoke, Doctor, Ashbury noticed Sergeant Catterick's shoulders tensing against an involuntary shiver, a brief lapse in perfect control that spoke volumes about his deteriorating condition. "Regulations dating back centuries didn't account for climate change or modern understanding of hypothermia, Doctor," Ashbury countered. "That man is showing signs of extreme cold stress." "The rotation schedule is determined by the captain of the guard," the staff member replied with finality. "The traditions of the Queen's Guard are maintained regardless of weather." Dr. Ashbury returned to her waiting students, frustration evident in her usually composed features. Historical significance and ceremonial importance aside, the practical reality of a human being standing motionless in near-freezing rain struck her as unnecessarily rigid adherence to tradition. "Is he going to be okay?" asked one of her students, a young woman who had been watching the guard with increasing concern. "Apparently, tradition trumps welfare, Doctor," Ashbury replied, unable to keep the edge from her voice. As she spoke, she noticed the guard's face had paled significantly, lips taking on a bluish tinge, visible even from a distance. Making a sudden decision, she unfolded her own umbrella and moved purposefully toward the ceremonial barrier. "Dr. Ashbury, what are you doing?" called one of her students, alarmed by this unexpected deviation from their professor's usually proper behavior. "Something practical," she responded without slowing her pace. Several palace security personnel noticed her determined approach, their postures shifting from routine vigilance to focused attention. A uniformed officer stepped forward as she neared the barrier. "Ma'am, this area is restricted. Please remain behind the designated line." Dr. Ashbury stopped precisely at the barrier, her academic authority evident in both posture and tone. "I understand protocol, officer, but that guard is showing clear signs of hypothermia. His condition has deteriorated significantly in just the past 20 minutes. The Queen's Guard operates under specific ceremonial guidelines," the officer explained with practiced patience. "There are medical professionals monitoring all personnel." "Then they're not doing their job properly," Ashbury countered, gesturing toward Sergeant Catrick. "Look at his coloring. His lips are blue and he's suppressing shivers that are clearly visible even from here. Tradition shouldn't mean pneumonia." "I appreciate your concern, Mom, but I must ask you to step back," the security officer insisted, his tone firming. "The ceremonial duties of the guard are not subject to public intervention." Dr. Ashbury stepped closer, umbrella raised. "I'm not the public. I'm a British citizen and historian who understands these traditions. Queen Victoria wouldn't have expected her guards to stand unprotected in conditions that could cause lasting harm." The security officer's face stayed neutral. "Ma'am, regardless of your credentials, approaching the guard is prohibited. Please return to the public area." A small crowd formed, divided between respect for tradition and sympathy for the soaked guard. "He's a person before he's a symbol," Ashbury insisted. "Tradition was never meant to cause harm." Before the officer could answer, a burgundy Bentley bearing the royal standard pulled in. A palace aide hurried forward with an umbrella as the Duchess of Cambridge stepped out, followed by Princess Charlotte in a bright yellow raincoat. Charlotte tugged her mother's sleeve. "Look, Mommy, the guard is standing in the rain without cover." "May I help? He's been there for hours." The Duchess studied her daughter, then the drenched soldier. After a pause, she nodded. "Yes, I believe it would be appropriate." Charlotte requested a distinctive navy umbrella with gold trim and the royal crest, an item steeped in history. A palace official's eyes widened. The royal weather consideration. It hasn't been invoked since the blizzard of 2010. Ashbury gasped softly. She had read about the provision but never imagined witnessing it. Soon the captain of the guard arrived, bowing formally. "Your Royal Highness, the captain approves implementation of Queen Charlotte's reign provision. The protocol may proceed." The official turned to the crowd. This rare ceremony dates back to 1795, when Queen Charlotte saw a guard endure a violent storm. Formalized by Queen Victoria in 1861, it acknowledges extraordinary service in hazardous conditions. Only a royal family member may initiate it, symbolizing the bond between crown and guard. Charlotte listened carefully as her mother guided her through the ceremonial steps. Then she advanced with measured poise, the captain 3 paces ahead. "Sergeant Ewan Cataric of Her Majesty's Royal Guard," the captain announced. "Her Royal Highness, Princess Charlotte, approaches with the royal weather consideration." Charlotte raised her voice clearly. "Sergeant Cataric, in recognition of extraordinary service during adverse conditions, I present the royal weather consideration." Holding the umbrella perfectly centered, she executed the quarter-turn gesture dictated by tradition, then stepped forward. "By authority granted through Queen Charlotte's provision of 1795 and Queen Victoria's formalization of 1861, your extraordinary service is acknowledged. The Crown recognizes duty fulfilled beyond measure." 2 junior officers moved into place, one setting a brass marker to designate his exact position. The captain addressed him directly. Sergeant, the royal weather consideration has been invoked. Acknowledge and proceed. For the first time that day, Sergeant Katarik moved. His white-gloved hand executed a crisp gesture of acceptance. The consideration is acknowledged with gratitude. Duty continues under royal acknowledgement. Ashbury whispered to her students, awed. It's remarkable. His duty isn't interrupted. It's formally recognized and protected. The marker holds his position while his welfare is addressed. A junior officer held the umbrella over Katarik, sheltering him as tradition allowed. Yet he stood as vigilant as before, discipline intact. Princess Charlotte looked up at him. Are you feeling better now, Sergeant Katarik? Yes, Your Royal Highness, he replied. The Crown's consideration is deeply appreciated. The Duchess smiled with pride. Your dedication today has been exemplary. The honor is mine to serve, Katarik said. The captain addressed the assembly. The royal weather consideration remains in effect until conditions improve. All guards will maintain duty under modified protocol. Nearby, the palace official spoke quietly to Dr. Ashbury. Your concern was genuine, but as you've seen, provisions already exist. Our traditions endure because they adapt without losing purpose. Ashbury nodded. I see now. History isn't just preserved. It breathes. As the Duchess and Princess departed, Charlotte paused once more. My teacher says Queen Victoria cared about guards in the rain because her father once became ill in a storm. Katarik's formal expression softened with respect. Your Royal Highness has an impressive knowledge of royal history. Charlotte smiled. I like to know why traditions exist, not just what they are. When the royals left, Ashbury gathered her students. Today you saw living history. The strength of traditions lies not in rigidity, but in thoughtful adaptation. That's why they endure. One student asked, so extreme weather was always part of tradition? Yes, Ashbury answered. Enduring traditions protect their purpose while adapting to circumstance. Sergeant Katarik's steadfastness and Princess Charlotte's thoughtful intervention showed how tradition and compassion coexist. What do you think? What traditions should we preserve today? And how might they adapt without losing their essence? If you value dedication and respect like our royal guards, hit like and subscribe for more stories. Ring the bell so you never miss a daily look at the people behind these traditions. And share this story with someone who thinks guards are just decoration. Let them see the purpose firsthand. Because true tradition isn't about standing still. It's about knowing exactly when to move.